kind of making a lot of gay jokes and like trying to normalize all of these gay jokes. But Hugh Jackman has been plagued with rumors of homosexuality throughout his entire career. So back to Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds. They're in this bromance at the time that he separates from his wife, and you just wonder.
Ryan Reynolds completely loses it after Candace Owens dropped a major revelation about his so-called bromance.
Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Hefner have a relationship or something.
Yeah, that caught me off guard too.
Anyways, people really began upping the questioning of his sexuality after he played this really flamboyant character in the Broadway play.
Turns out Reynolds was in a pretty cozy situation with Hugh Jackman, and apparently, Jackman's wife was unbothered by it.
That happened to Justin Baldoni, whether or not he wants to admit that or sees that.
But now, with Candace bringing in the evidence, it's like everything flipped upside down. Suddenly, Blake's thing with Baldoni could be a whole lot more logical.
It's because we are learning that Hugh Jackman, Wolverine, will be deposed. And I suspect that that might be making Ryan Reynolds extremely nervous, and I'll tell you why.
And the whole truth only emerged when Hugh Jackman got pulled into Blake Lively's lawsuit. Otherwise, this twisted scenario might have stayed in the dark.
And then they went back and they did some filming after the SAG-AFTRA strike, and somebody had admitted that they had done all of that dog pool filming. I said dog poo.
That's why I say Candace Owens unleashed a bombshell that made everyone freeze. She confirmed Hugh Jackman is set to be deposed, and in an instant, everyone's assumptions got turned on their head.
And the guy trying to replace Ryan as a husband and me as his best mate. Holy shit. What the hell are you doing messing with my best buddy's wife?
Because Jackman isn't just some random witness here, right? He's been side by side with Ryan Reynolds all along, especially while It Ends With Us was being made. That's where things look extra shady.
Hugh Jackman was also in the now infamously cringe It Ends With Us promotional skit that had nothing to do with promoting the movie, which was about domestic violence, where Ryan directed it and he brought in his mom and Blake was in the background. We learned that.
Think about it. Jackman wasn't even part of It Ends With Us, but he was right there during filming, deeply involved with the power players.
That Hugh Hefner then appeared at the It Ends With Us premiere. Again, not his movie. Kind of weird that he's hitting the red carpet with them. He obviously knows what is going on. What would that conversation have been on the way to the premiere?
Candace directly calls out Jackman's part in that notorious promo skit Ryan Reynolds directed. It was so off the wall and cringy. It was like a high school bully session on Turbo.
So he was one of the unnamed dragons, if you will, in all of this. And it looks like for that, he is being awarded for his contributions with a deposition.
Reynolds orchestrated the whole thing. Blake Lively popped up in the background, and Jackman? He played himself, but a version that flat out taunted Justin Baldoni. The entire bit had zero to do with promoting the movie. No plot tie-in at all. It was strictly about humiliating someone.
Hugh Jackman is going to be deposed before the trial because Baldoni's legal team wants to get the full scope of Reynolds' conduct.
And Jackman didn't just stop there. He showed up on the premiere's red carpet, beaming like he belonged, even though he had nothing to do with the film. That's not casual support your friend behavior. That screams someone more heavily involved.
I have a lot of questions about Ryan Reynolds' bromances, his various bromances over the years. We've talked about him and Jake Gyllenhaal, and obviously this has been a bromance that has been very much thrown in the public's face.
Owens calls it as she sees it. Hugh Jackman was part of Ryan Reynolds' bullying lineup. So Wolverine isn't the hero anymore, just another Hollywood big shot aiding a takedown. The sunny, nice guy persona Jackman built up all these years? Owens tears that mask right off.
Ryan's kind of perpetually highly publicizing his bromances is something that I find to be quite strange, right? Mostly because he's a 48-year-old man, Ryan Reynolds. He has 4 kids, and he seems to dedicate a lot of time and resources, like financial resources.
But what pushes this over the edge is how Owens ties it to Ryan Reynolds' bigger personality, especially his obsession with hyper-public bromance. This isn't just a one-time incident. Owens is lifting the curtain on the bigger pattern. Ryan Reynolds doesn't merely have friends. He parades them around like it's some kind of PR campaign.
guys can hang out with one another, but he feels like he has to make that effort. So he's like, nothing's weird here, nothing's weird. Bromances are so normal. I mean, notoriously, that's the reason why he flew out.
And Jackman didn't stop either. He really didn't.
Justin Baldoni's podcast partner flew her all the way over, presumably to the UK, to provide her expert testimony as to why bromances are like totally chill.
Particularly where Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal are concerned. Every move, every gag, every social media post, it's all part of a grand show to make you believe his bromance are totally wholesome and normal. But why go to such extremes to sell what should be natural? Owens highlights a question most people never consider. Why is Ryan Reynolds dumping so much time, effort, and money into advertising these friendships as perfectly fine? It's not like this is just two pals hanging out.
Of the word bromance is just, it's a platonic relationship between two men. There's no female equivalent to the term bromance. The female equivalent is friends. And so the fact that we need a term to describe two men going out to dinner.
Then there's the Liz Plank angle. Reynolds actually had her flown in for Baldoni's documentary. Her whole job was basically to reassure everyone that these bromance are strictly friendly, totally cool, no drama. Owens notes how desperate that comes across. And now, the next act is the I'm not a fan of you.
So bromance is almost this permission for men to connect and to show love to each other because it's like a joke.
Who goes out of their way to hire someone just to prove their male friendships are harmless. That's not normal. It reeks of a cover-up, a misdirection, or an attempt to steer people away from something they shouldn't see. At that point, these bromance don't feel genuine. They look more like a front. Owens hints there's something bigger at play. Insecurities, personal issues, or something Ryan Reynolds really doesn't want in the spotlight. Because when you're over-explaining, it sure sounds like you're hiding behind it.
So I'll ask the question, who out there needed that to be explained to them? Like, who needed this justification paid for to bring in an expert to tell you that guys can go out to dinner and it's totally chill?
And you want to know what's even wilder? He just split.
His wife of 27 years, her name is Deborah Lee Furness.
Hugh Jackman and Deborah Lee Furness delivered a total shocker by announcing their divorce. Yeah, after almost 27 years of marriage, they decided to call it quits. Talk about a curveball. They'd been practically a fairy tale couple for nearly 3 decades. Then out of nowhere, here comes the breakup news.
He and his wife are separating. Now, factually speaking, no judgment from me, but Hugh Jackman has been plagued with rumors of homosexuality throughout his entire career. It has been speculated.
They said they'd been blessed with nearly 3 decades of a wonderful, loving marriage, which sounds like a total dream, right? But apparently, their journey is shifting. Surprise, surprise. They're stepping away for some personal growth. And we're all supposed to swallow that, like, we can't see what's really going on?
27 years is a very long time to be married. They announced their separation to the public in September of 2023. Now, just to plot that on a timeline for you, that was in the midst of the principal filming for Deadpool and Wolverine.
But here's the juicier part. The timing of their split isn't exactly random. This came right when Jackman was knee-deep filming Deadpool and Wolverine. People started buzzing that the massive pressure of these blockbusters might have played a part.
Just never really bought into him at the peak of his career, having married a woman that was 13 years his senior. Some might say, oh, that's ageist. People thought this is quite strange. He was 28 years old when they got married. She was 41 years old. So many people were saying right off the bat, no. This guy is using her as a beard, which is the term that people use when you're in like one of these cover marriages.
Then there's the Sutton Foster situation. Jackman worked with her in The Music Man starting in 2021. They were seen together in January 2020, and now the internet is spinning tales that they're more than colleagues. But Jackman swears it's all professional. Funny how the rumors popped up exactly when his marriage was falling apart, though.
Convenient, right?
Now, let's toss more fuel on this fire. Jackman and Furness apparently never had a prenup. Can you believe that? Nearly 3 decades and roughly $250 million to their name, yet no financial agreements. So now they're splitting everything 50-50. That's messy enough, when you haven't ironed out details beforehand. And wait, there's more. Jackman's sexuality has always been a talking point. The fact he married someone 13 years older and took on roles involving same-sex intimacy has raised eyebrows for ages. While he's always brushed those rumors aside, the timing of his breakup and his closeness to Sutton Foster has stoked the gossip again. Is Jackman just misunderstood, or is there something deeper nobody wants to say out loud? The public can't stop speculating about his orientation, especially now that he's going through such a big, very public life change. Meanwhile, as Jackman deals with all that, Blake Lively is making her own headlines. In December 2024, she filed a lawsuit against Justin Baldoni, accusing him of sexual harassment and retaliation. Naturally, Baldoni hit back with defamation and extortion claims. And boom, what should have been private drama turned into a front-page fiasco. Now, here's where things get even more intriguing. Lively's lawyers tried to keep some personal details under lock and key, particularly texts between her, Ryan Reynolds, and Taylor Swift. They didn't want all that private info leaking. But is the real concern Ryan's possible orientation? Is that why they're so determined to hide it? They filed for a protective order, labeling certain documents as attorney's eyes only, AEO, meaning the public wouldn't see them. Let's be honest, with the amount of media heat these people deal with, can you imagine how explosive some of these texts might be if they came out? The judge didn't just stamp this request without question. He decided to look closer. He ruled only specific categories like trade secrets, security measures, and super personal things not directly linked to the case would be sealed. Of course, he also mentioned the possibility of some info slipping out to the tabloids. Picture the chaos if Lively's texts with Reynolds or Swift ended up public. That'd be like dumping fuel on a bonfire. The judge wanted to prevent that but knew the situation was already borderline chaotic. Baldoni's legal team hated that ruling. They felt Lively's side was going overboard with the AEO label, saying there was no real need to hide so much. They claimed some details were crucial and relevant, basically implying, if there's nothing shady, why complicate things? They argued the case was being blown up too large, and the AEO approach was just a stalling tactic, making discovery a nightmare. Sure, that's one viewpoint, but it's also risky in the middle of a Hollywood-level legal brawl. So, the court tried to strike a balance between guarding sensitive material and giving both sides the evidence they need. Not exactly simple. In high-profile cases like this, privacy battles with transparency. The judge's decision reflected both concerns. Everyone's basically tiptoeing around, hoping it won't morph into a full-blown media spectacle. And guess what's even crazier? Taylor Swift, the same one who's mostly stayed out of the limelight, can't really hide when her best friend, Blake Lively, is in the thick of it. As more details spill out, people are beginning to wonder just how much Swift is tangled in this mess. We've all heard about Swift and Lively's friendship, plastered everywhere to the point it feels like a PR plan. But what's wild is how their bond shifted from personal to business during It Ends With Us. Swift wasn't merely hanging around Lively's dressing room, she was influential in casting decisions. Director Justin Baldoni and actress Isabella Fuhrer even confirmed Swift's big role in picking Fuhrer to play Lively's younger version. Plus, Swift's track, My Tears Ricochet, ended up on the soundtrack. This wasn't a casual cameo from the BFF squad. Swift was fully involved. But here's the kicker. While Swift was deeply entangled in the film, rumors say she's doing everything possible to dodge the deposition in Lively's lawsuit against Baldoni. If she's so tied to the project, wouldn't she want to clear the air? Yet here she is, taking the silent route. Insiders claim she's actively avoiding the legal drama. And of course, everyone's wondering, if there's nothing to hide, why stay away? The plot just thickens. So, how much weight did Swift really throw around behind the scenes? She wasn't just offering friendly support, she had a direct hand in the casting and music. Her influence is all over this movie, which makes it tougher to ignore the possibility she's more caught up in this chaos than she lets on. The deeper you dig, the more you suspect she's heavily involved. Now that lawsuits are taking center stage, she's suddenly MIA. In Hollywood, it's standard for insiders to protect each other's secrets. Swift dodging the lawsuit or refusing questions shows the broader shield that the industry's big names rely on. People like Swift rarely get burned by legal fires when issues flare. They just hang back, let others or their PR squads handle the fallout, and keep themselves squeaky clean. But when everything's this high stakes, and you're clearly part of the puzzle, you have to ask if all this silence is a way to skirt responsibility. And if you think Swift's disappearance is the only odd piece here, let's shift focus to Ryan Reynolds. YouTuber Melanie King doesn't hold back, suggesting Reynolds is actually the puppet master behind all of this. She contends the lawsuit isn't about Lively's actions at all. It's about Reynolds nursing a wounded pride. She believes Reynolds freaked over the possibility that Lively formed some emotional bond with Baldoni, so he resorted to lawsuits. Yeah, rather than act his age, he turned to legal maneuvers to control the narrative and slap both Lively and Baldoni. Sounds wild, right? But it doesn't end there. King's perspective is that Reynolds isn't seeking justice, he's after power. Judging by this case, he's apparently fine with risking his own career, Lively's reputation, and even their kids' public image, just so he can stay in control. So much for the funny, lovable guy persona. If she's right, people might seriously change how they see him, and not in a flattering way. And here's the most jaw-dropping theory you never realized you needed. Melanie King has stirred the pot with the claim that Blake Lively is basically a cover for Ryan Reynolds, and their whole marriage is a PR charade to maintain his wholesome family man vibe. The idea hinges on Reynolds' bond with Hugh Jackman, which, let's be real, has gone way beyond bromance territory and looks like something else entirely. Brow love plays. Everybody knows Reynolds worships Jackman, but it's starting to sound like more than just buddy-buddy stuff. In a 2025 Men's Journal interview, Reynolds said his 17-year friendship with Jackman was like a marriage. Yep, you read that right. An actual marriage. That's not just two dudes cracking jokes and tossing a football around. He's literally framing their relationship as a deep, committed bond. When you talk like that, you've got to wonder if there's more going on than just besties. You don't label your pal your spouse unless you're extremely close. And these two aren't just cordial at Hollywood events. Nope, Reynolds and Jackman are practically joined at the hip, constantly sharing personal stuff, collaborating on projects, and attending events side by side. If that doesn't raise some eyebrows, what does? When you watch them, it's like they're making sure nobody forgets how tight they are. Given their status, it's tough to deny their closeness goes beyond industry peers. The deeper you dive, the clearer it gets that it might be an open secret everyone just ignores. And here's where it gets naughtier. A New York Times article from December 21st, 2024, stated that Baldoni organized a smear campaign against Blake Lively after she accused him of sexual harassment on the It Ends With Us set. Baldoni called that a lie and fired back with a $250 million lawsuit, claiming defamation and flat-out false information. Sounds like a high-stakes media chess match, doesn't it? And it's not just Baldoni's reputation at stake. It's about shaping the story that molds how the public sees everyone. With the media pushing a narrative hard enough, they can skyrocket or torch a career overnight. This all boils down to who holds the storytelling power, and it looks like big players are pulling all the levers. Watching this unfold, it's glaringly obvious how Hollywood's influence depends on media spin. You've got people like Taylor Swift's publicist, Tree, guiding huge outlets, while those same outlets try to mold our perspective on these celebs. The real question is, at what point does protecting someone's public image spill over into flat-out manipulation? How much of what we're seeing is genuine, and how much is meticulously crafted for audience consumption? The answers are still rolling in. Just keep watching, and subscribe to stay in the loop on the raw, unfiltered story.